Awesome. All right, guys, we are here with Jack Dillman, Dillman and Dillman Public Adjusters,
Yeah.
and we've got a little firsthand knowledge of you guys who are working together, and we public adjusting is I don't think people even know what it is. So maybe why don't you just start out and explain what you do and the benefit you bring to the clients.
Yeah, so as a public insurance adjusting firm, we handle all insurance losses with property insurance losses. We work on behalf of the insureds directly to help settle and negotiate their claims. We are advocates for the insureds. Insurance companies are businesses, so they have their own ways that they try to finagle around paying proper settlements, and we're in charge of making sure they pay out proper settlements along with all the details of the policy that we have to follow to make sure that the policy gets paid out accordingly. Big picture is we're handling the insurance proceeds and making sure that it gets paid out and dealing with all the steps to complete from a house has any sort of insurance loss until they're back in their house put back together.
Yeah, so your dishwasher goes, so, floods the place. You don't know what you do. You call your agent. The next thing you know, you've got a check in the mail for $2. And then you call the contractor and say, "Can you get this stuff done for $2?" And you can't. And what we always say is the first call you should make is to the public adjuster.
Yeah. It seems backwards sometimes,
Right.
but that you'd say, "Oh, let me see what the insurance company gets me," and then go to a public adjuster from there. And unfortunately, getting us involved, our biggest add to a claim is within the first couple of days of a claim, setting expectations for all parties across the process here, and truly, getting involved as soon as possible is a huge benefit for not only what the next steps look like, but with how the settlement and claims going to go with the insured directly.
Mm-hmm. And it's more. I mean, where do you think you get where? What the insurance company, what are they typically doing? Just emitting stuff? They're not really.
In regards to the step one, or
Yeah, when it comes to their your claim, they're usually just leaving out a lot of line items in the beginning. Is that usually the case? Or?
yes and no, right? There's different levels of adjusters internally with the insurance companies, right? So our firm mainly tries to handle the large claims. So if a house were to burn to the ground,
Yeah.
that's kind of our main work that we have. But there's different levels of adjusters internally, right? So the adjusters that deal with the claims that are $200,000 plus, they have a little bit more experience. So how we handle things is a little bit different. And then we have different adjusters for claims that are $50,000 less, $100,000 less, $250,000 less, and each division is handled separately. They're all handled a little bit different with how much education each one of those adjusters actually have, and they go through the script that they are reading off of,
Right.
and each claim's different. Each claim's different, but we still have to follow what the contract or the policy actually reads, and so they start at step one, and we also start at step one, but sometimes if it's a large loss adjuster versus a smaller adjuster or an independent adjuster or a catastrophic adjuster, all of those start at different scenarios and different steps, and we make sure that we're all on the same page and we're kind of running the show to make sure it gets done properly, because again, different education levels, unfortunately, with different levels of adjusters.
And I think that's a good insight of that, where people can feel it's us against them, or that the insurance company's bad. They're in business. They have to make a profit for their shareholders.
Of course.
And honestly, like, they can't just pay out on nonsense stuff either.
Absolutely.
And there's definitely insurance fraud out there. So their first initiate, is to try to, settle for probably as little as they need to, understandably. So it is a team effort, but I think when we've seen you guys come in, you guys have just been able to say, "Hey, but you're missing all of these things."
Yeah.
And it's a professional relationship that you need to pay all these additional items because this is part of the job, and that's usually what brings that claim up to the rate.
So there's different ways of how all public adjusters want to show to their clients the value add. Our firm in particular, the largest value add is from day one, right? So the we have the relationships with the adjuster locally, so we know personally most of the large loss adjusters, and they know our quality of work. And so being able to get in there up front, our goal every time is to produce an estimate and give that estimate to the adjuster before he even steps out on foot on site there. So that's our goal, and working backwards off of our estimates and our scope of work is a lot easier than any. If they produce their estimates, they're going to write how they were taught to write, which is not to the same level that we would want to see the claims to be negotiated and written at. And to get to your point, yes, we go back and forth of line by line of they paid for 2 coats of paint. This requires 3 coats of paint, or they were detaching or resetting that casing that when you detach it, it's going to be damaged, and that process can't be detached, must be replaced. So small things like that. Yes, of course, we go through and say, hey, listen, you guys missed these items, or we have a disagreement on those line items. But our largest value add is truly doing the insurance company's work before they're even on site, and that allows us to be in control of the claim and make sure it gets done properly.
Yeah, so key thing is bring you guys in the beginning, because I mean, what usually happens if you come in afterwards? Is it just tougher to kind of?
It is. It's essentially homeowners, they'll bring us in 2 months after it's a whole big disaster, and there's a whole bunch of disagreements, and we mention every time it's a reset button. It's a reset button plus some extra time, because we have to go backwards those couple months, all those interactions, all the conversations that we're had with all the different vendors, homeowners, insurance company, independent adjusters. We're going backwards on all that information, and it's a big reset button. And then we kind of, every time we get involved, we try to get it to the point where we normally would get involved from day one, hit reset, and move forward from there. And when there is involvement, or claim negotiation before we're involved, there may be agreed upon scope between the insured and the insurance company, and a contractor may be involved that's from the insurance company's vendor list, and that may not be the same scope of work that needs to get done, because that contractor's on the vendor list and they have interest in doing what, to some degree, what the insurance company wants them to do, because they want to get additional work down the road, even if that's not proper scope of work, because they want to get the next call back on the next insurance claim.
There's a lot of partnerships like that in real estate that I think people don't realize. And I think with bringing in that public adjuster, you guys obviously you have your relationships, but you still are a little bit of independent. Absolutely. So that homeowner can just be like, okay, this person is somewhat independent. You guys can, the conversation can be more like, they're not trying to, mislead me. Yeah. And I think when it comes to any kind of large loss, I mean, there's such an emotional aspect of it.
There is.
And I think what you're saying, like you come in a couple months later. A lot of this, doesn't this stuff take a really long time?
It does. It depends on the size of loss, of course, and the complexity. But average claims, like as mentioned, we deal with large loss house fires. Generally it's between 9 and 12 months is the average, from house burning down to someone's back in their house, and that's the average. It can be sooner than that and a lot later than that, and it's situational, of course.
So it's going to be a journey, and it's key to have you feeling that somebody's on your side and looking out for you.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it's in insurance. I mean, we don't, we do it, but it's like people are distraught. It's not as fun as when we go and remodel, somebody's kitchen, and they've been planning for it for months and years and saving up and picking out the choices, and they're all excited. You guys really, again, it shows, it's such a challenging time for that client to have someone like you guys that are like, okay, we're gonna take care of this. We're gonna help you. It's so invaluable.
Yeah. And a lot of it comes with trust with our clients. We're able to show them that they trust us, they trust what we can do, and they trust what they're seeing with the product that's getting done.
Right.
And once we build that trust with them, we're able to. There's two aspects, as you mentioned. There's the emotional aspect of the claim, and then there's the settling a claim, which is very much so business interaction, and managing both of those at the same time is a necessity, and a lot of it is the trust between us and the clients.
Yeah, I mean we say we've got to be part psychologist too. I mean we're in people's home, and and a lot of times we're in a happy situation where we're remodeling, but the husband and the wife can't make a decision, and they're fighting in front of us, and we're like, sitting there like, I don't know what to do here. But, it's very intimate. I mean, it's people's homes we're talking about, and it's it's the biggest investment that most people have. So it's very stressful. People are emotionally charged with it. So what have you seen? Do you find that people should really review their policies to make sure? Did you see like a lot of the problems happen that the policies just aren't written right? Or
There are a lot of problems. Now, we're a little bit separate. That's more so binding insurance versus adjusting the insurance. So I
Right.
won't speak too much on that portion, but I will say the problems that we do run into is, we have a lot of companies that underinsure insureds, and one of the issues that we see with that is not getting insurance through an agent or a broker. That's an extra layer of insurance per se, because they're the professionals to be able to assist with getting you guys the correct insurance. We see a lot of people go online and just get insurance themselves, and they're looking at how much is it going to cost them today. No one ever thinks they're going to be the ones that has a house fire or a flood. They never think it's going to be them, but unfortunately there are too often does it come to that. Yes, that did actually happen, and unfortunately that $5 endorsement is now costing $40,000 for these extra coverages here. So yes, I would definitely say reviewing a policy once a year, once every other year with your agent or broker, making sure it's up to date. As you guys know, construction costs change on a regular basis. It goes up and down like crazy, and making sure that that's up to date is a necessity. We have a lot of clients that, I bound my insurance. It's been the same insurance for 20 years, and the agent or broker, wasn't following up, and they're insured with proper insurance 20 years ago, whereas now they're underinsured. So make sure they're fully up to date. And again, going through with an agent or broker is very important. It's an extra layer of security, and someone professional who does this all day in and out, being able to help advise the correct coverages here, of course.
Let them know if when you put that addition on your home, because if it burns down, there might be an issue. It's not covered.
Yeah. It's the most policies, I believe, are roughly 5% of any home value that's supposed to be recorded anytime that you're going to be not in your house for X amount of days. Those are all things that and just a quick call to your agent is very important. We have a lot of clients that second home, I haven't actually been on site in an X amount of days, and that becomes an issue with the vacancy clauses. So definitely being in contact and being friendly with your agent or broker is very important.
That's a really good point, because when people don't realize that they have a transition in their life, maybe they've decided that they're going to spend 3 or 4 months down in Florida now that the kids have moved out, and now they haven't even thought about calling the agent and saying, hey, we're not going to be there. That is interesting. And I think it's really chatting with your agent, I think is critical, because I mean we had a tree fall behind the office here, and it took out my trailer. So I'm and the truck, and I'm like, well, it's a lettered trailer. I mean, it was a box trailer, and it was lettered and everything else. It was expensive, and they were like, it wasn't attached to the truck. So it's not insured. And I was like, well, that's not cool.
Yeah.
Why? Yeah. And then it fell in the truck, and then that was a hassle too. And it's no fault of anybody, but here's the settlement check for $700.
Yeah.
And you're like, I kind of know how this game works. So I'm gonna get it over to the shop, and they'll deal with you. And $12,000 later.
Yeah.
But thank goodness I didn't settle for it.
Yeah. One more thing that I would actually add to that is a lot of people who are antique collectors. They have certain types of very valuable items under a standard HO3 homeowners policy. A lot of those items have aggregates on them. So again, being friendly with your agent, knowing what's going on, purchases that are over $3,000, those should be recorded back to your agent to see if you need extra insurance on those items, because a lot of clients come back and say, oh, I have $50,000 worth of jewelry in this area that's melted and gone. Well, that's unfortunately capped off unless you guys had some additional insurance. So that's another major issue we run into with high-end value items.
Yeah, document that stuff. And some people want to be private, but the reality is don't.
Yeah.
You know, let's get this stuff documented.
Yeah.
Do you suggest people take photos of everything and?
Yeah, and this is actually, my brother was out in California with the wildfires. He was dealing with a lot of those scenarios. It's becoming more and more popular and common for agents recommending, once a year, just go through your house, take photos of what you have, save it in an online cloud file somewhere, and just have that recorded. Our team, when we go through, we do a thorough inventory of everything. We usually can see 90% of the items in the house, but at the seat of where the fire was, if it was a fire, there's of course items that we can't determine, and a homeowner generally doesn't remember off the top of their head every item that was in their house. So photos once a year, once every other year of what's in your house is becoming more and more popular across the nation.
Yeah, I think that's a good put that on your to-do list once especially if you come into some money and you buy a bunch of stuff and, so the unfortunate, let's walk ourselves. We got a couple minutes here. Let's, I think probably like the full losses might be a little bit easier, right? Because it's just they walk away, that's it, you're done, and then your team comes in. But I think probably these half losses might be more of, what do people, it floods or half fire, what do they do? Do they not, you kind of have to stop, right? Because I think some people start cleaning things up and taking stuff out, and now you guys are like, well, what did you take?
Yeah.
How does that?
It's again, everything's very situational, but say it's a small fire in a portion of the house, right? For most fires, the fire direct damage is generally minimal, right? We have usually it's isolated to a couple rooms that there's direct fire damage. Everything else is smoke damage, right? So we have what burned? Was it plastic that burns? Is there toxins throughout the house that has to be mitigated properly? So it is situational. Each one we kind of get into, okay, do we have to do extra testing? Is it safe for this person to live in a portion of this house? Are they comfortable living in a portion of the house? Policy does allow for a reasonable expense for housing or whatever that's going to be needed in situational fires or floods. With a flood, when if it's a portion of the house, is it in an area that is a necessity, meaning a kitchen, bathroom, if those are the only means of making food or using the restroom, then that may determine them having to go into a different house. But yeah, step one, if they can get us involved from day one, assess, see what's going on, because truly we have insureds go through, oh, I cleaned this whole portion up. Well, that still has to be mitigated potentially, and you guys clean that. You guys took personally the liability of if there's any toxins still on that as opposed to someone else. It's a big liability shift game, and insurance covers that, right? They cover all of that, and when insureds do stuff themselves, a lot of times, unfortunately, it helps short term, and it hurts long term.
You see that, and you get it. There's a lot of people out there, it's generational too, but no, let me tell, this is my house. I'm going to take care of it, know, and they want, and Paul, maybe they thought it was their fault or whatever. And, or they want to kind of move through it, through the emotional side of it. So let's get this stuff cleaned out. And maybe, kind of what you're saying is that it might not backfire, but it might not be the best move.
Yeah, there's some things that, insureds will move, hide, say, at the same time, duties as an insured is to mitigate from further damages and protect the seat of loss so that the insurance company has every right to do their full investigation. So if it's due to something malfunctioning, the insurance company has the right to go after whoever, manufacturer may have caused the loss. And if an insured goes through and they affect the seat of a fire or they move an item, that can potentially void a policy in some scenarios. And we have to be the ones to protect that scene and make sure that there's no void in any coverages.
Right. So a lot to it. I mean, people don't think about all of this stuff, and not necessarily everybody has a friend or a family member that's gone through it, because God forbid this stuff happens, right? But it's it's critical to maybe stop and think and hopefully somebody's listening to this and they call Dillman and Dillman if something happens, or call a public adjuster and at least kind of get the right information, because there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
What do you see? What do you see? What have you guys seen the most? Is there, a lot of fires, or is it, is it a lot of water damage? I mean, I know some of this stuff's actually gone down when in COVID because people were home and they're like, wait a minute, there's a leak there, and they go turn it off.
Yeah. So actually, it's a little bit reverse on the large loss. More people in the house, more people doing some crazy stuff in a house, and
Okay.
sometimes that leads to more damage. So
Right.
we actually saw a rise in damages that were occurring because everyone's in the house. Now, when
Right.
those were actually reported is a
Right.
different story. But yeah, it
Is there? Yeah. So is it so for what kind of things were people doing? What kind of things were people doing?
So yeah, I mean, people, you have families that either couldn't afford housing, they all moved into one house. So
Gotcha.
then you have 10 people now living in a house
Right.
that there were before 4 people, and then the main question of what we mainly deal with is large house fires. We see that influx, more people in a house. You also see it seasonal.
Yeah.
So in the winter, more
Yeah.
people are instead of outside, everyone's outside. In the summer, spring, and fall, everyone goes inside for the winter. They crank their heat. They have space heaters. They're running extension cords. So we see during those seasons is when we would normally see, an increase of fires. Then we
Right.
go into winter as well. We have the wind storms that we're going to see some frozen pipes where everything's going to be freezing.
Yeah.
Those usually come across when you have 4 or 5 days of low temperature, then
Right.
high winds. Everything's going to freeze at that point. So we see an influx of those. And then, of course, during usually late summer is when we see the windstorms come through. That's leftover of some potential hurricanes or microbursts come through, and that's when we see all the windstorms come through. But our
Taking the trees down. and-
yes, yeah, they whip around trees. So we'll see. Was it 2 years ago we had the storms that came through, and an entire neighborhood. There was a tree on just about every house, and we had to deal with that. We were managing that entire neighborhood's claim, yeah, it just comes out in random microbursts of
Yeah.
storms and claims. So there's always influx of claims coming in. Where we're growing as a firm as well, trying to accommodate. But our main focus is the large fires is our main business, floods, and then from there we deal with the a couple claims that we have going together of
Yeah.
the businesses, whether it's partial floods, where it's not complete tear down, but partial rebuilds here.
Yeah. Have you found any in times when you've come in where you haven't really, there's for whatever reason there's been a lot of fault from the property owner or the insurance company that you haven't really felt? Is there any kind of things you could tell everybody, hey, don't do this, this, and this, because it could really affect you? I think, we talked a little bit about it, saying, hey, make sure you update your policies, but any other things that you guys have seen?
So, some of the scenarios that we run into is when we have a windstorm or wind-driven rain, right? That can be done during multiple different events, or it could have, the original damage could have been from a year ago, and they just noticed it, and then they don't wait, or they wait to call us a year and a half after some of this damage has occurred. And since then, additional perils have happened and additional claims. Technically, that's a scenario that we run into a lot of. Hey, listen, I have all this damage. Well, when was we're 2 years down the road potentially. It's very hard to pinpoint the time frame, because for the policy we have to be able to define when the original peril actually occurred. So that's definitely a scenario we see a lot with claims that it's not as cut and dry of a house burning to burning down, or a frozen pipe or a flood. Those are the scenarios we run into.
So I think people might be nervous or something, but it's worth just giving you guys a call. You come out, you take a look at it, and you can see, because we've run into people too where it's like, yeah, well, it leaked and we didn't want to go through the insurance company. I'm like, well, that's all mold right now, guys.
Yeah.
That's not a good thing.
Yeah.
It's not healthy. And at least call some people, get in a second opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Give us any PA firm a call.
Right.
We're professionals in the industry. Like everything else, right, in your life, you always call a professional. Like you mentioned before, this is one of the largest expenses in most people's lives, is their house or home or business. And why would you take this one on yourself?
Right.
this, it makes sense to consult with professionals. Again, I don't think every claim needs a public adjuster.
Right.
The only reason why we're in business is because insurance companies, unfortunately underpay on a majority of the claims, and they make it a hassle. So I don't think every claim needs a public adjuster,
Yeah.
but I would definitely consult with a professional beforehand.
And we won't name names, but honestly, from talking with you, but I mean, it's like there is certain, depending, you went with the cheaper carrier, you might really need you.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
it's
if you went with a good carrier, they might actually give you a good settlement.
yeah. So it's the once you actually get into the industry, you kind of see it a little bit more. But we definitely have insurance companies that we work well or better with than others. That doesn't mean that the policies necessarily match that, because at the end of the day, the insurance companies are selling a product, which is the policy themselves. Some policies are phenomenal, but the adjusters that we have to deal with that carrier, difficult. Some of their internal policies are difficult. So I will say that we usually will recommend, after any sort of loss, and insurance companies, give the insureds a hard time. Insureds are always looking for alternative options if this were to ever happen again.
Yep.
And unfortunately, our answer does change every couple of years, because it's who's actually adjusting the losses and what their policies are at the time, for who we would go and recommend. But
Well, we say the same thing. They're good until they're not, and it's a lot with subcontractors. I mean, oh yeah, they were good. They were good on a couple jobs, and then they,
yeah,
became terrible. And we've obviously, recommended them 100 different ways after that. It's for whatever reason, companies have to adjust. Sometimes the carriers get take a bath. Sometimes
Yep.
they're losing billions of dollars,
Absolutely.
or so they say on the news. I don't know. I tend to think maybe that could be some accounting thing. But all right. So I mean, that was quick, Jack. I think it's really beneficial. I mean, this podcast is really about educating people about home ownership and all of the and sometimes we even talk about not home ownership. It might not be in the cards. Really explaining what go in. You just don't go to a mortgage broker, get a mortgage, and go buy a house. Like, you got to think about all of the things about it. So I think this has been really helpful. I know when I first met with you guys, like, I didn't know too much about it, and now I'm like, if somebody calls, and we get quite a few. Our marketing is pretty good these days, but we'll get insurance calls. I'll be like, you got a public adjuster? If you don't, then call Jack and Brennan, and if you don't have a public adjuster, we're not working with you. Because it's like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
we don't know how to fight the insurance company. So
yeah, and we appreciate that. And to touch on that, because that is a lot of the scenarios we run into is, oh, my contractor will negotiate this. Well, insurance adjusting and the claim settlement process is 80% paperwork, 20% rebuilding.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, most people don't comprehend that. Right. And so when we're working with contractors that work with public adjusters on a regular basis, they understand the huge value add of our files are thousands of pages of documents. Right. That they don't want to deal with. They want to do what they're right. good at and what they're licensed to do. And at the end of the day, with negotiating an insurance claim, there's only three parties that have the license to do so. The insurers themselves, of course, an attorney or a public adjuster. So right. Huge value add there, and that's something that most insureds don't truly comprehend or understand. Yeah. That's some of the value add there.
You see in life a lot of things. People are tripping over the dimes to get, or the dollars to get to the dimes. And, when it comes to your guys' cost, you 100% get that plus a lot more. So it's worth, if you want that, don't try to be cheap, you people out there, because you guys will bring in that much more money. You'll get the thing done right, and it's worth the worst of cost. It's always worth the professionals,
Yeah.
So awesome. I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else you want to kind of tell the
No, I mean, we appreciate the invitation here. We love working with you guys. I expect the next year coming to also be a productive year. Just a little thing about the company here is we're a family-operated business. Yep. My father was a fireman locally, and had to leave that and went to adjusting. He didn't know what it what it actually was. He's like, why are these people standing here after a fire? What's going on? Why are they, here? So he understood, what was going on, and started partnering up with a few of people in the industry. So him and his father were working together doing public adjusting. Came on, back in 2019 full time. I worked with my father, grew it from there, and now my brother's here, and we got Brendan and a couple other people. So small family business that we're growing, and we're able to do a lot for the insureds, and hope to be able to work with you guys more throughout the year.
Yeah, I love it. It's kind of like it just close it. Like you want you guys to be successful too, right? But that means like it kind of comes with some natural disasters and stuff. So like, yeah, obviously you guys have a lot of market share to pick up because you guys are really good at what your job is.
Yeah.
But we don't wish more natural disasters. We wish you to grow though, as getting more clients, get your name out there. So awesome. Well, thanks again, and stay tuned. We have another one with Brendan, and we'll drop the live.